See what he's got to say.
Yo, today we're gonna talk about the sad downfall of Calcharo, a Wuthering Waves character that was at some
Still got to say, absolute boss of a character. Love using him. Can still build him to make insane damage as well, in my opinion.
point the most hyped character in the game, and it took him one version to be trashed by the community. And does Calcharo really deserve that? And is the problem in the character?
I'm going to say no, because dude's sick. It's Dollar Store Sephiroth. It's Sephiroth at home. And I think he's just pretty awesome. And at the minute, he's the only character as well who has got a full-on intro animation, hasn't he? Not just an actual intro. Obviously, everybody's got their intro move, but he's got a full-on intro animation. Has anybody else in the game got that? I don't think they have, do they?
Or in the game systems? Or is the character actually good and people are just trolling? Today I'm going to take you on a journey. I'm gonna
I personally think he's good.
take you back to the start of Calcharo. And the reason why I'm making this video is that one of the viewers sent me a lot of the videos that has been made about Calcharo, a lot of Reddit posts, and the viewer went like, okay, a lot of people are trashing this character and I wanna see your opinion about him. Is he actually bad or not? So I wanna say from the start that I'm here to double down, and I'm only going to be giving facts because I tried my best to do my research and talk to a couple of theory crafters in the game. So let's go back to CBT2 in Wuthering Waves, the second closed beta test.
Didn't play any of the beta tests, so I can't comment on all that. All I will say is, though, I still have loads of fun. I think he's one of the most fun characters to use, in my opinion. I love his movesets. I love his animations. The dude's just a Chad, isn't he, really? And I think he puts out a really good amount of DPS. Obviously, you got Gian, who's the Crane Eater, and you got Jinsei at the minute, who really are the premium, prime, top of the mountain DPSs, really. But I still think he's a great character.
This is where Calcharo started to shine. A lot of people were hyping the character, and it was basically the most hyped character or the most team that was hyped in the game. Calcharo's team was even more powerful than Gian's team, and by a good margin. That's how insane people were saying the character was. Not only that, the character also was very, very fun, and still fun to this day. The reason why the
Agreed. Character's so much fun to use.
character was very powerful, of course with using Yinlin, is the synergy and the mechanic that was crazy good in the beta. So let's say that
He's still really good with it now, in my opinion. I might be missing something here, and we're going to find out, obviously, from the numbers, but I still feel like when you use him with Yinlin, even when you don't, the dude's just a straight-up monster.
Yinlin did buff Calcharo. Now Calcharo doesn't need to go out of the field. So what you can do is something called quick swap. So what you do is swap to the buffer. For example, you want to swap to Verena, make Verena use her ability and come back to Calcharo as fast as possible so Calcharo doesn't disappear from the field. And as long as Calcharo is still on the field, he is still getting the buff. This is the mechanic that makes sense in the game. And with that, you can have more than one buff from one character from different other characters. Well, this doesn't exist anymore since the game came out. This was only in CBT2 because now the mechanic have been changed. If you switch to another character, even if you didn't disappear from the field, the character would be counted as a switched off field character. If you want,
That's a shame, that is, because I think that is a good mechanic to have. It should definitely not even just be if they stay on the field, it should have a small window of time, because then that adds another element of skill, that if somebody's quick enough, they switch over, they get the move and they get straight back into it. It adds that extra level of, like I say, that little bit of level of skill or timing to squeeze that little bit of extra juice out of it. So I do think that'd be should have stayed, but maybe just tightened up a little bit, because that is a shame.
want to switch to Verena and come back, you will lose the Yinlin buff. This is how crazy and bad this thing is. So when I looked at that, I was like, okay, that's kind of bad. I think this is the thing that made Calcharo worse at launch, but there's still more. But I have to mention that this change in the mechanic did upset China a lot, and Chinese players were saying that they should give it back. And the problem is that Wuthering Waves or Kuro Games said that the game wasn't intended to be like that, or it was actually intended to be like it is at launch. So we're not only
Okay, if that is their design philosophy, though, I can't argue with that. But I must admit, I think that sounds like, I never played the closed test, but that sounds like a cool mechanic to me. Especially, like I say, if the window's small and it's almost like the parry, but maybe even tighter. It just like adds an extra element of layer of skill, doesn't it? Of like quick swapping perfectly, you'll get that. If you don't do it perfectly, you won't get it. And maybe even add an extra element to it that like makes it more mechanically based. But obviously, if that wasn't something they meant from the get go, but at the same time, sometimes developers don't necessarily mean to have something in a game, but it can make a game better, can't it?
We're talking about Calcharo, we're talking about a whole mechanic that is literally gone from the game. And to be fair, I think this mechanic should come back, because if you think about it, this mechanic can give more depth to the gameplay and more skill expression, and even gives the swap back mechanic more purpose. And this makes the skill ceiling of the game even higher.
Because it's a big thing. It's a big thing in this game. Switching is a big thing. Obviously, with your outros, your intros, the way characters buff each other, the synergy, all that sort of stuff. So it seems like, even though obviously it wasn't a design system that they're meant to be in the game, it's like it seems like it lends itself to the way Wooer plays. So like, I agree on that, yeah.
Without touching the skill floor of the game. So it doesn't become harder, it just becomes better. And I think this is a problem in the gameplay in Wuthering Waves as a whole. I will probably make a whole separate video about this mechanic and the mechanics that can be added into Wuthering Waves gameplay. But let's stick to Calcharo. So Calcharo was so affected by this nerf, and the only reason that this probably happened is maybe they wanted Jian to sell even more, and having a character.
That's potentially why. That's a good shout, actually, because of him being a premium banner. That's potentially a good shout. Maybe now that Jian isn't on a premium banner, maybe we'll see it come back. But again, whether the Kuro have been really responsive to points made by the community, haven't they? But obviously, this is if they're saying it's a fundamental design philosophy from them that it wasn't supposed to be in the game, then maybe it's something that they'll be less likely to change. But I'll give Kuro credit in that regard. They do tend to listen to players. It's whether how many players actually want that or know about it as well, because I didn't even know about that, because obviously I didn't play the closed beta test, so I didn't feel like I've lost anything. But now, knowing that was there, I am kind of bummed that I'm not able to do that now, I must admit, because I think that's a cool little extra element that adds layers to this game. Because that's one thing I love about this game. The combat feels like it's got layers to it. I like Zenless's combat, and it's got a lot more nuance than you give it credit for at the start. It really has. It's a lot more like a fighting game in that sense, in combos and the way that sort of stuff works. But Wooer's combat really does have a lot of nuance to it, and I think adding extra, obviously you don't want to overcomplicate things too much, but always having those little extra nuances, specifically to certain characters as well, and little mechanics, I think they only add to the game. They don't take away from it.
That is stronger, that the limited character being in the standard banner with having a selector will cause them to not have good revenue at the start. So this is only speculation, by the way, because it's the only explanation that I found, you know? Now, since Calcharo was super powerful at the beta, people didn't see his other flaws.
I think as well, though, even in the beta, even in the main game, and maybe a lot of people didn't expect the nerf or that to be taken away in the main game, because apparently I don't think Jian's banner sold that well, did he? Especially compared to other characters, they've sold a lot better, and obviously Changli is going to absolutely crush it. Yinlin crushed Jian's banner. Obviously it's a dude, so that's going to be a factor, but with having Calcharo in the game and potentially a lot of people expecting that mechanic to still be in the game, that might be a factor of why people didn't pull, because you've got one insane DPS already. Why do you need that one? But Jian is incredibly powerful. I think missing out on Jian is a shame for a lot of people, because the dude's just ridiculous.
Until he got nerfed, because at launch we discovered a lot of other things, a lot of other problems in Calcharo itself. We're gonna start with his skill. Calcharo's skill is basically a skill that does damage and gives you stacks for your forte whenever you hit an enemy with it. You can use it 3 times, and when you get 3 stacks in your forte, you will get the enhanced charge attack to do the most damage. Although this is the first thing that I'm talking about, it already had a lot of problems. The first thing is, this ability locks you in an animation. So when you use the second E, you're basically stuck in an animation that you can't even dodge. So if you're playing holograms or against a strong boss or even an elite mob sometimes, this can cause you to lose. And it makes the gameplay with Calcharo feels a little more clunky, because if you see any other character in the game, you can basically cancel the resonance skill, and this doesn't exist in this character. So this character just punishes you for using an ability. That's not only it. If you miss this ability, you will not get a stack. And we know that a lot of bosses in the game have a lot of mobility, and Calcharo can
Agree there, but I don't really often tend to find it causing me issues. But at the same time, for more of the harder content, especially now, I have been using Jian and Jinsi a lot more. But I don't ever really feel like that's a major problem for me. Maybe I'm just not good enough, or brain's too small, you know. Or I just yeah. Well, I can see what he's saying though.
Cannot fight
It's
that.
a good
He
point.
can easily miss his ability, and then you will be in a downtime, and you would have to wait for the whole cooldown so you can use your ability again. So this ability basically locks you in an animation and also is hard to implement. Now moving on to the ultimate, which is arguably one of the best
I don't really feel like it's hard to implement personally, but the points are valid.
looking ultimates in the game. This ultimate also has its fair share of problems. So Calcharo uses a powerful nuke, then he will use 5 stacks so he can get the powerful charge attack again. To get those 5 stacks, you need to do a full combo, and the full combo does a good amount of damage in the end. Now if you dash or move or do anything else, this combo will be interrupted and you will be going back from the start. You will not lose your stacks, but the combo will start again. So we know that weathering waves in endgame modes at least is not very easy, and the mobs and the bosses have a lot of damage. So if you have to stand still and do 5 whole normal attacks without even moving, this will cause you to lose a lot of HP, and potentially if you're against a boss, most of the time you will die.
I agree. I think though this comes into me with a little extra layer of skill with this game in timing it. Of course, a lot of and it's going to be particular against particular enemies as well. Of course, certain characters are going to be better against other enemies. But I think using it at the right time when you've got an enemy stunned after a major attack, when they kind of have that little settle before they go into a next one, is the perfect window to use it in that case. But I agree, it does make him lesser, but it doesn't mean that you still can't get those abilities out, like I say again with his skill as well. But these are all really valid points, these are.
And because of that, you don't want that, so you will do a perfect dodge. And whenever you do it, you will lose the whole combo.
Yeah.
Now, some people might say that you can swap back on the 4th auto attack when he keeps slashing and use your other character so you don't be affected, then you go back to him. Now we go back to the first problem, because you're gonna lose the Yinlin buff. That's why it wasn't a big problem before, but now you cannot switch to another character. You have to be stuck with him or you're gonna lose the whole buff. Now the other problem is that the character is...
That is a good point though, because it does make it a lot more specific then, doesn't it? As I said, I'm fine with the game having more specific situations for certain characters and certain moves, because I think that just adds to the game. But I do agree there that losing that now does make it so that it becomes even more specific, which for a lot of people, it is going to make him lesser. Personally for me though, I still think the dude's an absolute giga, Chad.
is very dependent
And I love
on
using him.
Yinlin. If you
He's so fun to use.
use Calcharo without Yinlin and use another sub DPS with him, the value of his team will go down. Like if you compare this to Jian, if you compare this to Jinsi, they all have 4-star options, and even
I agree with that. Yeah, Jian has a little bit more variables in sub DPS and buffers. Yeah, I feel if you're not using Yinlin, dude does lose quite a bit of his potency. Yeah, that's a fact.
more than once.
That doesn't mean that we're not going to get something in the future that makes that a thing, you know? We're still early game and we don't have that much characters. There's always going to be that imbalance at the moment because we don't have the characters. Hopefully, they can make Calcharo better in the future, because this is what I was talking about in the power creep video in regards to the... I don't see power creep in the game yet, but if you are going to bring characters in that do start to level up in those regards, if you have them work really well with older characters and synergize well with them, you can lift those characters up. And then if you add new characters in that buff other characters in a way that they're not necessarily better on the base, but with these new characters, they get lifted up as well. So there's definitely the realm for another character to come in who partners even better with Calcharo than Yinlin does and offers all of these specifics that we're talking about in this video and makes him a little bit better, or even something new that's just like, okay, don't even care about that shit anymore. We've got this now. This team's insane. So, you know, hopefully anyway, this is all the things that I'm hoping that Kuro are looking at and going, okay, all right, we're not going to go back to that because this is the design philosophy that we've got. But what we're going to do, we've got something even better for you waiting in the future. Just wait. But obviously there's going to be some people like, well, I don't want to. But at the same time, you know, let's see.
4-star option, whereas Calcharo needs Yinlin, and Yinlin is so contested between other teams. Since she's one of the best characters in the game, you want to use her with Gen C to get a very powerful team, for example. And a lot of other future teams and current teams can use Yinlin, and she's going to be good in it. So this is another factor. So now if you...
Again, this is where I say, potentially, maybe another character will come, and hopefully will come, that just makes Calcharo better, and is well, not specifically designed for Calcharo, but it's got elements in mind that are really forged towards making Calcharo a better character. We haven't even seen who Calcharo is yet anyway, so that sort of stuff might come with the story, you know? Like, we don't... Calcharo's just some random dude at the moment. Like, we're going to get to a point, hopefully, in the game where we get fleshed out who the hell he is, because he's a badass, and I want to see that. So... you know, hopefully we see some character that's part of his story, part of his arc, that helps him become an even better character.
To look at it, the problem isn't really in Calcharo's damage, but it's more in his kit and the mechanics of the game that works against him. Because now, if you compare him to another character like Onkor, which is also another character from the standard banner, there's like a 15% damage difference with an easier way to implement the damage. And if you want to get the whole value from Calcharo, you would probably need to play against target dummies, because they don't do damage, you won't need to swap back or do anything. That's basically how you get the full value of the character. So the systems of the game are against the character. His abilities are...
Can't really argue with any of those points. They are fair points.
Against him. The mobs, the bosses, and the modes are also against Calcharo. So, of course, this character will lose a lot of value. Some of these problems can be shared with other characters, but most of them are only unique to Calcharo. So now I have two questions. Can Calcharo, with all of these problems, do a lot of good damage? And
yeah, I think so.
how can we fix the character? So the first thing that I want to say, yes, Calcharo is not the best character to use in the game, but you can put him in, for example, the A tier, because
Yeah,
Calcharo is not a horrible character.
My opinion, S tier. We might do this one of the days. That's a ranking. S tier for me, Jian, Yinlin, and Jinxie. And I'd probably put Verena up there because just at the moment, she's just the best healer and supporting that role. There's just nobody else that compares with her. Baiji's just a worse version of Verena. So I'd put those up there. But I'd definitely put him in A tier. And I'll give him almost touching the ceiling of A tier because he's just cool.
Because of how much damage he has. Although he's pushed by the systems, he still can do a good amount of damage, a considerable amount of damage.
Yeah,
and he's
really
still
good
a
damage,
good
in
character
fact.
to start with. Is he an S tier character? Not anymore. And even Danjin at S.
But in my opinion, if we come with somebody who's a great, well, this is obviously conjecture and can happen for any character. You might bring out a character that can make a 4-star, absolutely freaking top S tier. But I think I hope that's what Kuro have got in mind. Somebody who's going to potentially make Calcharo great again, to use the term.
Zero can be better than Calcharo and has more variety of teams.
Yeah, but Danjin's insane though anyway. She's ridiculous for a 4-star. Like, if you can get her copies as well, she's basically a 5-star.
So as a value as a whole, not only about the damage, a 4-star can outclass this character, okay?
The thing is though with Danjin though, which a lot of people probably won't get the value out of her though, she's a high skill character because she's an absolute glass cannon, because you have to drain your own HP to get all of that. And it's really a risky character to play with, in my opinion. You know, if you're not on point with your dodges, Danjin can get wiped so quick. Well, any character can get wiped so quick in this game when you're playing the higher level stuff, because she drains a lot of her own HP to get that. It just makes her such a glass cannon, an insane glass cannon. But of course, that then comes with a higher skill tier in terms of what you need to be doing in your gameplay.
Okay, I know that Danjin is like an exception. She's a very good 4-star, but we're talking only at S0 here. Now, how can we fix Calcharo? There are two ways to fix the character. Either fix the game and get back the swap back mechanic and make it as good as it was. This is the best thing that they can do. The whole game will be better, not only Calcharo. Or you can make Calcharo get...
I agree with that. Like, I would like to see that mechanic come back, to be fair. As somebody who never tried it, I'd like to see it come back. But I also think... I just think maybe bringing it, because of course we're going to obviously see characters that are going to really good supports that are going to change the meta in the future. Because DPSs obviously are a big thing. You're going out and hitting people with. But supports are the people that really change the meta, aren't they? Because they turn a character in from being great to god tier and can not only affect one character but multiple teams, can't they? You know, like I say, Verena is the GOAT of this game. If you're not running Verena in your team, really, especially as you get to higher tier content, you're missing something. She's top tier. And at the moment, nobody competes with her in that role. Whereas, like, obviously with Jian, you've got Jinsei as well. You've got Calcharo, probably not so much now. You've got Danjin kind of in that role. Suppose you could even put have a Grover into that role. You know, even Sheer at a lower level. But nobody does Verena's role like Verena.
Get more stacks from his ability easier. For example, you can get his stacks faster with his ability, maybe 2 stacks, or you can get stacks from perfect dodging. If you perfect dodge, you get a stack. Because again, the problem isn't the character in terms of damage, the problem is the kit of the character and how it works with the systems of the game. It's like not from this game. Now, of course, these are the facts. If you want me to talk about my biased opinion, I still think that the character is one of the best characters and one of the most fun characters when you can use him. And that was the downfall of Calcharo. Thank you for watching. We're close to 20k subs now, so don't forget to subscribe. Anyway, that was the video. Bye bye.
Still makes some great content, actually. He really does make really good content. I agree with most of what he said in that video there. Obviously, I never played the closed beta, so I can't agree in how different it feels. But I do agree with a lot of what he's talking about mechanically in the game and how, you know, it negatively affects him specifically. And those mechanics coming back probably would improve the game in general. But even if they don't, I just believe future characters can fix Calcharo. Obviously, that's a thing that's going to take time later on, and a lot of people won't be happy with that. But I think a lot of characters are just going to get better off new characters coming out. That's the way these kind of games work because of the synergy systems and characters buffing other characters and how the swap system works in this game. That's just inevitably going to be a thing. But a great video, actually. I agree. I think Calcharo is a high-level A-tier character. He's insanely fun to use. He can still pull out ridiculous amount of damage. He's got a badass intro animation. I personally don't find myself struggling with those mechanics so much, but I do understand what he's saying, and it does happen. And the kind of takeaway from how it feels like it should be played, if that makes sense. But obviously that's a design philosophy they're going with. Maybe a lot of that can be negated with the future character. We don't know what they've got coming. Maybe that's the grand plan. You know, there's some character that's coming in the future that's going to fix these elements and kind of bring them in like, you know, by proxy, in like kind of like a secondary way, potentially, maybe. But then will that support be too powerful? Will they be the meta support then? I don't know. Be interesting to see. A great video from Seorg. You should definitely check him out. The sad downfall of Calcharo. He's still a Giga Chad though, guys.